Extreme sports, impossible records, unforgiving consequences. In this episode, we uncover the real stories behind some of the most shocking fatalities ever caught in the world of human endurance and experimentation. It was August 22nd, 2016, in Norway's Caldorten Valley. The wind pulsed softly across the cliffs, brushing over ridges that folded into a dark ribbon of stone and water far below. Just past noon, a small group stood quietly near the edge. One man lingered apart, barefoot, steady, his eyes narrowed against the light. Elias Kruger was 31, a civil engineer from Munich. Each summer, he vanished into the high ranges of Europe, walking lines between mountains that most people only stared at from a distance. Among highliners, he was known for precision and restraint, a man who stripped everything to its essentials. Highlining is a balance of nerve and gravity, walking across narrow webbing stretched between cliffs, often thousands of feet above the ground. Most wear safety leashes. Elias once did too. Lately, he'd been walking untethered, soloing. For him, risk was not defiance. It was discipline. Sponsors drifted away when he stopped using harnesses, but an independent film crew from Switzerland agreed to capture this attempt. Elias had helped design the anchors himself, triple-checking every bolt and knot. The line spanned 4,200 feet, suspended nearly 1,100 feet above the gorge floor. He chose Caldorten because it was clean and quiet. No tourists, no drones, only granite and wind. His aim was simple: to complete the longest free solo highline ever walked. The morning's air was crisp but unstable. Shifting currents, occasional gusts. He waited until noon, then entered the line. At first, his movement was measured, rhythmic. Around 1,300 feet in, the webbing began to sway, the line bowing with the wind. He crouched, breathed, and waited. When it calmed, he stood and continued. No one knew it was the last time he would rise upright. At 1,450 feet, a stronger gust tore across the valley. He pitched sideways, arms flared. One foot missed the center. For a heartbeat, he floated, suspended between balance and void. Then the tension snapped. He fell. Witnesses heard a hollow thud echo off the cliffs. His body struck an outcrop halfway down, breaking violently before tumbling to the gorge floor. The impact was instant and final. Rescuers later confirmed catastrophic trauma, multiple spinal fractures, a crushed pelvis, and both legs shattered. He had died on impact. His family held a quiet ceremony in Munich. Fellow climbers and slackliners came from across Europe. Authorities found no fault, filed no reports. Elias had walked by choice, on ground that belonged to no one. It was October 28th, 2017. Dawn crept over the frozen plains near Helena, Montana, tinting the sagebrush with pale gold. In an empty field, a helium balloon the size of a silo strained quietly against its tethers above a monitoring truck. Below it, one man climbed into a pressurized capsule, while three others watched from a distance. The air was calm. The horizon is flawless. Nothing hinted at tragedy. Ethan Cole, 32, a former Air Force survival instructor from Colorado, had built his post-service life around precision and risk. After the military, he became a stunt consultant, designing aerial sequences and advising elite jump teams. Friends called him obsessive. Notebooks of gear specs, oxygen charts, and failure maps covered his workshop walls. Among base jumpers, Ethan was respected for clean exits and unshakable focus, but wingsuit flying was his real obsession, turning the human body into a glider, slicing through air at over 120 miles per hour. He believed flight was math, and math could be mastered. For nearly 3 years, he pursued one impossible equation: launching a wingsuit from the stratosphere. His capsule, built from modified military hardware, was fitted with oxygen systems, venting valves, and a reinforced carbon rig. It had passed unmanned tests. The plan was simple: climb to 42,000 feet, exit clean, glide 20 miles. The team was small, 2 friends and a spotter, tracking him by radio from a van beside a frozen basin. No permits, no press, no transponder. By 7:46 a.m., the balloon reached 41,900 feet. All systems nominal, Ethan radioed. He depressurized, opened the hatch, and stepped into minus 60 degrees air. Seconds later, the descent spiraled wrong. Instead of leveling, he pitched forward, spinning violently. The left wing of his suit tore, and was later found miles away. Experts would determine it failed from wind shear during exit, something no ground test could predict. He spun for 30,000 feet. At 9,500, his reserve deployed automatically, but tangled in torn fabric. The canopy never filled. Impact speed, 188 miles per hour. Death was instantaneous. His team reached the site an hour later, guided by scattered debris. A memorial was held in Boulder, where friends and family gathered beneath a folded flag. The FAA issued a moratorium on private balloon jumps above 30,000 feet pending safety review. It was September 12th, 2017. The wind barely moved across the open white of the Karratha Salt Basin, a vast, glinting plain stretching in every direction beneath a cloudless Western Australian sky. In the distance, a modified pace car rumbled toward the horizon. Behind it, a lone cyclist waited, crouched over a carbon frame bike, ready for release. The attempt had taken months. Nadia Keller, 34, an aerospace engineer from Zurich, wasn't chasing fame. She'd once worked as a courier weaving through city streets before earning her engineering degree. Over time, cycling turned into an obsession, the pursuit of speed as design perfection. Land speed cycling pushes riders beyond 200 miles per hour, using rocket-assisted propulsion and aerodynamic precision. At that velocity, any mechanical error can be fatal. Nadia knew that better than anyone. Her latest machine, 5 years in development, fused a carbon fiber frame, twin microthrusters, and manual stabilizers. It was funded through private donors and an engineering fellowship grant. Her team was small: 2 engineers, a medic, and an experienced driver. She'd completed several test runs below 160 miles per hour without issue. Despite recent range-shifting surface markers, conditions seemed safe enough to proceed. At 9:48 a.m., the tow began. The car pulled her to 110 miles per hour, then released cleanly. The bike steadied, her posture low and precise. By mile 5, telemetry showed a vibration in the left stabilizer. Her spotter called to abort, but she was already past safe braking speed. The front wheel began to oscillate. She stayed committed, then ignited the thrusters. The bike surged forward, then disintegrated. Nadia was thrown nearly 300 feet, tumoring across the salt in a burst of white dust. Witnesses described the impact as a low, dull crack that hung in the air before silence. Paramedics reached her within a minute. Her helmet was split, injuries catastrophic. Death was instantaneous. Her ashes were scattered over Lake Geneva during a private service. Authorities suspended all unofficial speed trials at Karratha pending review. Among the land speed community, Nadia's name became a symbol of precision, courage, and the razor-thin boundary between control and chaos. It was February 10th, 2019. The morning sun lifted over the dunes near Al-An, stretching long shadows across the silent desert. A reinforced drone platform hummed above the sand, its rotors spinning with rising pitch. Suspended beneath it sat a single man in a carbon harness, ready to climb into open air. Dmitry Novak, 27. An electrical engineer from Brno, had moved to the UAE after graduation to work at a mid-level drone manufacturer. By day, he assembled flight control units. By night, he chased a dream, merging drone propulsion with human flight. His ambition wasn't transport, but creation. A vertical launch system capable of initiating a wingsuit jump without cliffs or aircraft. Drone-assisted human flight was still experimental, and failures often ended fatally. Dmitry's rig, built in a rented workshop, used overclocked rotors, salvaged batteries, and lightweight composite arms. It stayed just below the UAE's 25 kg flight limit, skirting regulation. The project was entirely unsanctioned. No government would license a manned drone assembled from spare parts. He'd reached 1,800 feet in earlier tests, always alone, except for 2 friends monitoring telemetry from a laptop. The rig had no AI stabilizers, only manual control. This flight aimed for 3,500 feet. The sequence was memorized: throttle up, hover check, disengage, deploy wingsuit, reserve parachute if needed. Conditions that morning were ideal. Calm air, perfect visibility. At 6:38 a.m., the drone lifted smoothly, climbing past 2,000 feet. Then, near 3,200, it began to wobble. Investigators later found one motor overheated, losing thrust in thin air. The platform tipped forward. Dmitry disengaged, falling cleanly but off-axis, his wingsuit deployed, half open. A sleeve caught on the harness, twisting him into a violent spin. At 300 feet, he reached for his reserve chute. It opened but was tangled in torn fabric, never inflating. He hit the desert headfirst at over 120 miles per hour. Death was instant. Paramedics confirmed massive cranial and spinal trauma. 3 days later, he was buried in Brno after his parents flew in to recover his remains. Authorities immediately banned all drone-assisted human flights and launched an inquiry into unauthorized aerial experiments across the Emirates. Thanks for watching. If these stories of real ambition, innovation, and the razor edge between mastery and disaster fascinate you, subscribe and explore more true accounts just like this one.